Hello and welcome to Inside Sitecore 7, where we join our top engineers behind Sitecore 7 for a deep dive look on different topics. Today is session 11. We'll be covering Speak, the new interface technology that was launched with 7 and has been upgraded a couple times since. First, we have our usual team members. Joining us in Copenhagen, we have Tim Ward.
Yo.
Joining us from Bristol, UK. Hello, Stephen.
Hello.
Also in Copenhagen, hello, Martin.
Hello.
And we're also joined, as promised, by some guest speakers today. We have Jakob Christensen joining us from Copenhagen, who headed up the original R&D for Speak. So thank you for joining, Jakob.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us.
Okay, so we're having our next guest is delayed, we'll say, with a previous celebrity engagement. And also thanks to specifically our Australian and Dutch viewers. We know that in half an hour there is a sporting match beginning, and we'll just ask that you preserve your company's bandwidth as you try and multitask both the videos. So today we're talking about Speak. It's the UI technology that enables business applications to be orchestrated via Sitecore. And we see applications that could be as broad as a multi-channel campaign application. We see applications that could be as targeted as a simple approval from, say, a non-traditional content management author. Maybe this is a physician, a sales rep, or a customer service rep. The point is with Speak, we can step outside of more traditional web content management interfaces and lines of business and step closer to customer experience line of business applications. First, we're going to go over a quick frequently asked questions, bits of history sprinkled in there. And again, Jakob, thanks again for joining us. He has put together a list of things that he gets commonly asked, and as well, we mentioned last time, his YouTube channel is gold to follow if Speak is a topic you're interested in. With that, the gang will also be introducing questions. As usual, please ask your questions on hashtag Sitecore7. And with that, Jakob would like to introduce to us Speak and the frequently asked questions.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. So I guess you should see my screen. Do you see my screen now?
Sure do. Yeah.
Excellent. So speaking about Speak, I was thinking about doing, a traditional history on how we develop Speak and all the things and the decisions and everything we have done throughout the development of Speak. And then I kind of thought that we've done this quite a bit, and maybe that's not that interesting. And there are plenty of other presentations that shall go very detailed through the actual development of Speak. So instead, I thought, well, maybe we should do a demo. But then I've done quite a bit of demos on the YouTube thing, so maybe this is my opportunity to do something a little bit different, getting some information out there that is not that's not easy to get out there. It's the questions that I usually get when I'm presenting Speak or when I'm talking to people about Speak. So this will be, as Nate said, it will be frequently asked questions to me that are not really in any of the other material that we have out there. Again, I'll say thank you to the Sitecore 7 team for having Pierre and me on this talk, and I hope I will be able to provide a lot of value to you. Maybe I should do a little bit of personal introduction. I've been with Sitecore for quite a while. I'm one of the co-founders, and I've sort of like had a hand in almost all the parts of Sitecore over a long period of time. And specifically, I have worked very much on the Share UI part, which many of you may know, and Speak is more or less a replacement of Share UI. I've also worked quite a bit. I did the initial implementation of OMS back when the digital marketing suite was called OMS. I did that as well. And Well, a large part of the UI that's in Sitecore, I've been responsible for that as well. And anything you hate about the UI, you can blame me for that. So one of the things I did try to remedy myself with was Sitecore Rocks. I've always done quite a bit of development on Sitecore Rocks as well. So hopefully you will forgive me for all the UI that I've done and forgive me with Sitecore Rocks. Anyway, so let's go into the Speak vision. And the vision for Speak is really building very rich web applications and doing it the Sitecore way. And Sitecore is very good at building information sites and with integrations, very deep integrations with backend systems and that kind of things. But we didn't really back in the day have tools for building very rich, very deeply interactive websites. And this is what Speak is really trying to solve. Back when we started on this, we had a couple of things that we sort of like brought up as key points that we wanted to do with Speak. And 3 of those were don't invent anything, embrace the platform, and use Sitecore rendering engine. And a lot of people ask me, what do you mean by not inventing anything? And I think for a lot of people, we suffer, at least personally, I do suffer a little bit from the not invented here syndrome. I like to build things from the ground up, and so like I like the complete control that you have when you build something yourself. The flip side of that is, of course, well, you're stuck with all the maintenance, all the documentation, all the training that you have to do. And at this point, when we started with Speak, and this is back in 2009, I'll get back to that a little later. We had done a lot of Share UI was very much a proprietary technology, and we have suffered a little bit maintaining that. So not invent anything. That was one of the key things that we wanted to do. So like there are so show as mean by not inventing anything. Speak is just the glue that ties all of these great technologies, JavaScript technologies, and Sitecore together. And hopefully it's a very thin layer on top of that. Realizing that browsers had become very mature. When we started Sitecore back in the day, this was in early 2000s, we had none of the libraries that we have today. All the jQuery prototype, all those kind of libraries, they weren't in existence back then. Why we did Share UI the way we did stuff on the server, and we had a very thin client. Now it's the browser and the client machines are so powerful that we can have a more fat client and a thinner server. So that's really a part of the vision as well. And using the Sitecore rendering engine, that was just to do. So this is kind of interesting because this ties into how Speak started out. And as I said, this was back in 2009. Speak was originally an evolution of the OMS. We realized at that time that we needed a specific UI to serve marketing people. The content editor, the desktop, that was not a suitable match for those kind of people. They needed a little bit more guidance. So I did the initial research and development back then, and we came up with sort of like a UX strategy for how this should work, and we hired a very good person called Ellinger, who wrote all of these UX specifications. And that got turned into what we call Speak Generation 1. This was based on web forms. This was based on Sitecore, but it didn't really use the Sitecore rendering engine. So the next generation, that was taking the generation first, the first generation, and putting that on top of the Sitecore rendering engine. And that's what got turned into Generation 2. And this was actually a great tool, I think. I didn't use it that much, but what I saw from it, it was quite good. And there were it was used to launch the ECM and order management, as far as I remember. And I think those are still out there. for some reason, and I'm not actually quite sure what happened, it was felt throughout the organization that maybe we needed something a little different, and that's when the next generation sort of like started. They came to me and said, we need to do this speak way a little bit different. We need to fix some issues and make it a little easier, maybe something like that. And what they basically did is they sort of gave me a carte blanche, a free hands to do whatever I wanted to do. So I spent 3 months sort of like going, what would I do today if I had to build Sheer UI again? And during those 3 months, all the basic concepts of Speak was really put in place. Stuff like all the JavaScript libraries, all the data binding, the page code, all that kind of stuff. So those are the different generations of Speak. Internally, that has been extremely confusing, I must say. There's been a lot, when you say Speak, which generation do you actually mean? But now, as time has passed, we're always talking about generation 3, which is the one you've seen in Sitecore 7. Okay, so a little bit more on the questions here. So, when should I use Speak? Well, that's a common question I get, and I will say the right answer to that is the right tool for the right job. And Speak is certainly not suited for all kinds of tasks and jobs you need to do. And as I said, for the purpose of Speak is really building rich web applications. If you're just doing a normal site, or you're doing a small task, an info site, if you're doing deep backend integrations, maybe you need Speak. You don't have to. You can just keep on working as you've always done. But I will say that if you need something that has business logic and has rich controls client side, please do consider using Speak.
So Jakob, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So obviously everyone on the team here is actively using Speak for all the new versions of Sitecore. And I think I'll speak for 3 of us where we're not typically front-end developers. I mean, I drew a lovely stick figure once, but that was about it. What about this? What about the common things that customers extend Sitecore with? Things like editors, the new tabs you can put in the content editor, all the Sheer UI stuff. Is it your recommendation that pretty much going on, you're going to be better off and more kind of you're going to get upgrades more smoothly if you start building your stuff in Speak? So should customers start doing all the back-end stuff in Speak as well?
Also, that's a very complicated question, really, because again, it's the right tool for the right job.
Yeah.
I will say that if you're hooking into the content editor, that is really heavy Sheer UI, and it depends a little bit if you want to change editors or you want to do field types and stuff like that. I wouldn't go with Speak. No, I wouldn't do that.
Cool.
But if I'm doing a new dialog, if I'm putting in a new button in the ribbon that does specific things, the dialog that comes up, I would definitely build that in Speak, and I think that's what we're going to see over the next period of time. That Sitecore will start working with all the dialogues that we have, cool. and moving that into Speak. I have some questions that discuss that later, so maybe we can come back to that. Cool. But I do think that if you're completely new to Sitecore and you want to look at the technologies, I wouldn't focus on Sheer UI, I would focus on Speak. So, and I think it's important to realize that Speak is really built on top of the Sitecore rendering engine. It means that Speak is just, you have to look at it as just renderings with a bit of JavaScript. That's really what Speak is built on top of, just renderings, and we don't do any changes in the rendering engine whatsoever. Now, the JavaScript part, that's a little bit controversial for some people, because JavaScript has, well, for some people it's still a kiddie scripting language, or it's not a really serious kind of language. On the other hand, there are a lot of people who think it's the greatest language ever, but I'm not in either group. So do you really have to learn JavaScript to work with Speak? No, you don't. And the reason for that is the aim of Speak is to provide you with a sufficiently big toolbox of components that you don't have to write any kind of code at all. That's sort of like the ultimate vision of this. That this is how you would do things in the old days with Visual Basic 6 or Delphi or some of the old RAD tools. Having a sufficiently big toolbox that you can drag and drop your pages together just using that, and then you don't have to do any JavaScript whatsoever. If you do have more complicated scenarios, yes, you will have to do JavaScript. And I think well, JavaScript is becoming more and more important in the world, so some basic knowledge of it is probably required if you work with websites. So the next question is that's typically the second question I do get when I talk to developers is they like TypeScript, and I must admit I love TypeScript. To me, as a backend developer, it really feels like coming home again when you dive into JavaScript. It's really great. But can you use that for Speak? And the answer to that is, well, in some ways you can, because TypeScript is just really JavaScript. So you can write things in TypeScript, and it will get turned into the JavaScript that you like. But we don't in Speak 1.1, which is the version that is that's out right now. We don't have any explicit support for TypeScript. We do have some good news, and that is that we will, in future versions of Speak, have explicit support for TypeScript, and it's coming sooner than later.
Nice.
Nice.
So this is a very, very, very typical question. So when will the desktop be replaced? And will we do anything about the content editor? And again, this is a tricky question because we can't go out and just do a big revolution and remove the desktop or completely rewrite the content editor, because there are too many people using this. So I think the right answer is no, it's not going anywhere. The desktop is not being replaced, and the content editor will always be there. But what I think will happen is that we'll do a smooth, gradual evolution of both the content editor and the desktop. We will have alternative ways of launching applications. We will slowly and gradually replace some of the dialogues that we have in the content editor. So it won't be a big bang. On the other hand, I do also think that we will see alternative UIs pop up. It could be that we will have a different kind of content editor that's built in Speak that will run parallel with the existing content editor. And when that gets sufficiently mature, maybe it will take over as the primary editor. But neither the desktop or the content editor is going anywhere. Honestly, to me, these are always a little bit of weird questions, because when I present Sitecore Rocks and I ask people why they're not using Sitecore Rocks, they usually say, well, I'm used to the content editor and it's good enough. And that's like, well, so the content editor on the desktop is really good enough so that they didn't want to switch to Sitecore Rocks. But on the other hand, when I talk Speak, well, it's one of the first questions that I do get. So it's a tricky question. So actually, getting back to one of your questions, Tim, is, so can I open a Speak-based dialog? And yes, you can, because a page, Speak runs within a page, and if you do a show modal dialog or you pop up a dialog in some way, that page could be a Speak-based page. And there are ways to communicate back and forth between the Share UI and Speak. And we actually already do that in the select media dialogues that we have in there right now. So that works. So
and
can you run?
Is it an iframe or not?
Yes, it will be an iframe.
Cool.
But the next question is, well, can you run Share UI and Speak on the same web page? And I will say no, officially. We do not support it. It was not designed for it, and we fully expect it not to work. Miraculously, it actually does seem like it does work. but please never do that. We have some some R&D on this, and well, for some reason it does work.
I think what's really interesting here about your point on replacing, Jakob, is that Speak is truly additive in this sense, right? Where I think one of the questions that isn't on here is, what about a user that wouldn't need the whole content editor? Or what about a process that the content editor, say, doesn't govern or orchestrate? So I think it's really compelling to understand, to your point, we have a toolbox, we have tools in it. The desktop and content editor don't need to be replaced, but what we do have now is the ability to provide something additional, something more targeted, something that would speak directly to the line of business that is acting. So I think it's really important to frame that this is additive, and why customer experience is beyond, say, the traditional user of the desktop and content editor. And so as more people in the organization contribute to customer experience, we want to make sure we have an interface experience for them. So
exactly.
Yeah, I really like your point here. It's additive, not necessarily an insistence of replacing it.
Exactly. It is built on top of everything else. So no, it's not. It won't be as that replacing it. It is additive. I think that's a very good point.
And let's not forget the DB browser. I mean, that thing's a classic.
Oh yeah, never gonna touch that. One of the other old developers in here really loves that one. If you make changes to that one, I will not make it through the day. That's for sure.
That never gonna give you up video is gonna go viral again, I think, this afternoon.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So if you look a little bit more at what Speak really is, and I think there are two parts of Speak, and they're equally important. One is we have a core, which runs client-side, which is responsible for driving all the Speak interaction. And what it drives is really these component libraries. And one of the questions I typically get is, we have one component library, can I have another one? Or, well, if you have two, why would you have two? Why not just have a single component library? And to me, I think the Speak core is enabling having multiple libraries, and multiple libraries is offering choice. So by having multiple component libraries, we have more choice as developers. It might be that one library is not particularly fitting for the task that you have, and another library might be better. And that is to me a real strength of Speak. And again, if you look back, as you can hear, I'm very old school. If you look back at the old Delphi or VB6 days, you had many libraries with many components in them. And I think that's sort of like the same thing that we're going for with Speak. So can you do your own component library? Sure. Like everything else you can in Sitecore, you can do your own thing. And when if you've done something really great, why not sell it? Why not make some money off that? And that's one of the things that I want from Speak, having developers do as many component libraries so that everybody has more choice. And if they want to make some money off that, I think that's a great thing. And I think the way that you can distribute it, if you don't want, well, GitHub is one place to put it, but Marketplace, the Sitecore Marketplace, I think that would be a great place to put a new component library. So multiple component libraries, that's about having choice. And I think that's a really important point. Actually, we do have multiple component libraries in Speak right now. So the ones that are officially supported is the business component library, and the purpose of that library is building marketing applications. But we needed a little bit more experience with building multiple libraries, so we did a couple of other ones. The ones you see right here, that's actually a Speak page that you're seeing right here. This is based off the Metro UI, which is a great CSS library that's out there. And I think this particular one has, I think we have about 70 components in that library. It's available off GitHub. You have to know that it's running on Speak 1.2, which will be in Sitecore CMS 7.5. update 1, as far as I remember. And the other component library we have is the Bootstrap one. And actually, I want to show you a little bit of that library. So let me just see if I can open a browser. I hope you can see my screen still. So let me just log in. And this is the Bootstrap library that we have in Speak. This is a regular Sitecore web page with a lot of renderings on that. And you can see we have a bunch of stuff down here, all kinds of stuff. We have this one as well. Let's see if we can have that. All kinds of stuff. And this is just renderings that you can plug into your page. And Speak enabled, I'll get back to that. We have cool stuff like this working as well. We have the carousel down here. This is interesting stuff. But the really cool thing is, this is built on Bootstrap, is that it's Speak enabled, which means that we get all the data binding stuff. So if I go here on this paragraph, I just type in a lot of stuff, you can see it actually updates. I can change the alignment if I want to do that emphasis as well. So success button as well, we can do a danger button. And this is just running off Speak. Change the visibility stuff here. I have another nice one down here. Is I can actually change the progress bar on this one, striped, and it should be danger. So actually, this Bootstrap stuff, I think we have about 65 components, and that one covers something like 80% of all the Bootstrap stuff. And it's really good. It's actually one of the things that I've always been missing in Sitecore is these big component libraries where you can just do things very easily and so like get a good result very quickly. And I actually think the good result is another key point with Speak. You may find that when you're using Speak, it doesn't do everything that you want. And that's a very conscious decision on our part. It's simply because we want your page to look good. And we want it to be in line with all the other style that we have that we're putting into Sitecore. So you can't do pink buttons. I'm sorry, you can't do it. We won't allow you to do it. But on the other hand, honestly, I don't want you to do pink buttons because I want it to look like the rest of Sitecore. So it's not, you can't do everything, but what you can will hopefully look good. That's one of the things.
One question.
Yep.
Is Bootstrap abstracted away for developers?
In a sense, it is.
A layer. Okay.
Yeah, in a sense, it is because the Speak core doesn't have a dependency on Bootstrap. The Speak core doesn't know Bootstrap at all. On the other hand, the business component library knows a lot about Bootstrap and is using that. So the dependency goes for the component library to Bootstrap. So suppose I want to do something based on SERP Foundation. I build up a new component library built on SERP, and that will have a hard dependency on SERP. But the Speak core will run both libraries just as well.
Cool.
So let me find my presentation again. So this was Bootstrap. So this is one of the interesting things because, as you know, Speak is mainly used for building backend stuff, as that's in the Sitecore client. But can we use it on the front end as well? And the answer to that is, again, no, you cannot. But it turns out that it's actually not that difficult to get it working on the front end. Speak has been placed in the core database. I'll get back to that a little bit later. And the reason for that is we want to speak for just building our own stuff at the very beginning. Wasn't really sure how Speak would be accepted by external people. So we wanted to play it a little bit safe and put it in the core database, and so like Speak belongs to us. But Speak has always been designed to be able to run on the front end website. So you can actually, when we get support for this, and I'll get back to that, you will be able to run it on a front end website. For 90% of development, we actually had Speak in the master database, and for the last 10%, we moved that into the core database. So this is a big no. Well, you can technically, but don't do it. We don't support it. We don't recommend you do it, but we are working on this. This is one of the top priorities for us.
But when the support is coming, then we can make pink buttons, right?
Well, then you have to change the style sheet. We're not going to put any properties on the button that you. Anyway, well.
Martin just loves pink. That's his thing.
Okay.
Shirts and yeah, he's
Well,
just
Martin, I think you should do the pink library then. I would love a component library with pink buttons. Actually, I think that would be great. Hello Kitty. That would be great. That would be fantastic. So the next question that runs out of this is, well, does Speak actually support the experience editor, the page editor? Well, we didn't build any support into the business component library because that runs on the back end. And well, we don't really use the experience editor to build up Sitecore pages or Sitecore client pages. So no, we didn't put anything in there. Once we get Speak on the front end, we will have to support the experience editor. Unfortunately, what happened was we made a bit of mistake implementing Speak. So right now there's a clash between the experience editor and Speak. They don't coexist very well, but we're working on that, and we will get there at some point. So right now, no, don't put Speak on the front end. We won't support it. We don't recommend it. Technically, yes, it can be done, and please be aware that you can't use the experience editor to build up Speak pages. So that's a big maybe. So the core database. So why did we actually put it in the core database? Actually came out of some feedback that we got from a partner that was working with Speak at a very early during development of all of this, and they said, well, if you're doing backend stuff, it should be in the core database, and that really made sense to me that we put it in the core database. That's where it belonged at that point in time. So that's why it's in there. It is a backend tool, and that's why that's how it's being used right now. But one of the issues that we do encounter from time to time is that, well, we did use some very alternative locations for renderings and layouts and other kinds of items. And let me just jump into Visual Studio and show that for those who haven't really been working with Speak, and you'll see it's actually a very different kind of layout. So here we are in Visual Studio. I'm using Sitecore Rocks because that's my thing. And we are in the core database. We have a new entry, top entry, which is client, and then we have this business component library right here. Hopefully what you will see is the structure here should be somewhat familiar. We have layout, system, and templates, and in other parts of the system we actually do also have a content node. But if we'll go into this one, you will actually see layouts and renderings as well in here. So if we pick common and we pick a button here right now, so this button here, that's a view rendering, right? With all that entails. But what we have underneath the button is actually a template, which is not where you would expect a template to go. This is the parameters templates for a button. This specifies what properties a button exposes. This is what you can set on it. And you will see there's a type up here. So the type actually points to this item, which is the button type, which is the default version primary, which is what we have in the business component library. So what we are doing here is changing the way that Sitecore stores familiar concepts like media and layouts and templates and stuff like that. And the reason we do that actually came out as actually a kind of a funny story. Michael, our CEO, and Lars Flø, which you probably also know, a lot of you, we were flying back from a symposium in Boston, and we were talking about the future of Sitecore. And one of the things we all agreed on is that when you work with Sitecore, you tend to jump a lot around in the tree. You're going from content to layout to template to media and back again, and you spend a lot of time navigating. And one of the things we wanted to do is actually group things that are related, group that together. And when the time came to look at Speak, one of the first things I tried was actually putting things in different places. And it turns out that the API is working great. The API has no issue whatsoever with putting templates all over the place. The problem lies in the UI. There's a lot of hard-coded paths in the UI that point to specific places. but the API doesn't really care. So what we wanted here is the ability to have, so like, we were thinking of it more like, if you want to delete something, you should be able to do that with just one click. So if I, for some reason, don't want a button rendering in the business component library, what I could basically do is just go here and click delete, and everything that is related to the button should disappear. I think this is a very important thing for Sitecore, that we actually can structure content in a different way. We don't have to be locked into the way that we did Sitecore initially. You can actually place things in a lot of different places. And the important thing about that is, of course, use the GUIDs, don't use paths. That's a very important lesson for that. So this was about grouping related content together. So let me go back to my presentation. And so this way of structuring all the different items, structuring that in a different way, that is why you cannot use the web client to build speak pages, because it has all of these hard-coded paths in there, and we haven't gotten around to change that because we've been considering speak as an internal tool. But it will come. We'll get this fixed. So, and this also explains why we need Sitecore Rocks to build speak pages, because we had the opportunity to change all of this stuff in Rocks, and we could do it. We did that, and we thought, well, the future of developing Sitecore really depends on Sitecore Rocks. So that's why we say that you can't use the web client to build speak pages, have to use Rocks. So about all of these wonderful JavaScript libraries, what do we support? Well, different kind of things. We have Backbone and Knockout in there. We have underscore, and we have require.js. And one of the typical questions is, well, do you support Angular? We don't do that in Speak 1.1, but we have done things a little bit differently in the next version of Speak, and I'll get back to that. So maybe it will be possible to support Angular down the road. Other than that, will we support any other kinds of JavaScript libraries? Well, the entire idea of Speak is standing on the shoulder of giants, and hopefully Speak is sufficiently generic and forgiving and extendable that you can put in your favorite JavaScript library. If you want to have a new control, don't write it from the bottom up. Go to GitHub, go somewhere else, find a plugin that does what you want, and integrate that into Speak. That's the way to do it. So yes, Speak will support many of your of the libraries out there. Angular, as far as I've understood Pierre, it's a little bit different, and he actually looked into this, and he had a little bit of issue with it. So we're a little bit undecided on Angular right now. Correct me if I'm wrong later, Pierre, on this. So where's all the documentation on this? Well, actually, we do have quite a bit of documentation on it. I'll say the first thing you need, the first blog post you need to read on Speak, that's a blog post by Anders Laub. He does a much better introduction and describing why Speak is the way it is than I possibly can. I think it's a great blog post. It's the one blog post that you should read. Other than that, we have a bunch of blog posts on SDN. I think I posted something like 20, going through a lot of the details of Speak. Well, Tim and Nate has been very kind and pointed out the YouTube videos that we put up. We've got about 10 or 12 of them right now, and they seem to be watched quite a bit. Oh, I flipped 2 of them. So the SDN, that we actually do have a cookbook on SDN as well that you could look at. So actually, we got quite a fair bit of documentation on Speak. So why Speak based on MVC and not web forms? This was a technology choice that we did up front. I was a little bit afraid that if we chose web form, we would seem a little bit old-fashioned. MVC is all the rage, so we should do that. Another question, well, if we don't support web forms, will we support web forms at one point? Well, we might. It's one of those cases where you have to give us feedback. We get massive amounts of feedback on we want Speak to be built on web forms. we will certainly consider it. Out of the box, there is no support for web forms because the component library is built on MVC. Actually, the Sitecore will work if you build a component library based on web forms. That's actually an interesting idea. So can you speak on one page and web forms on another? Sure, you can do that. And I think Tim actually I already asked that question. As long as in an iframe, you can do that. Last slide for me in this one is the backbone knockout controversy. This is a discussion for those who actually have been working with Speak, and if you haven't been working with Speak, take a break right now because this is going to be a little bit technical. So what you see in Speak 1.1 now is we actually use backbone knockout quite extensively, and the way we do it is we build up. Well, let's start another place. If you have a component, we design the component in such a way that it has a model and it has a view, and the model, that's built from Backbone, and we use Knockout to render the view. And the way that this works is really by having a Knockout and a Backbone model synchronizing behind your back. So whenever you change your model, it will trigger a change in the Knockout model, which will update the front end, and actually the other way and the other way back. This is by far the most complicated issue in Speak 1.1, and we get a lot of head shaking and a lot of questions on this. And honestly, it's one of the things I would do differently if I get the chance again. And thankfully, I did get a chance, but we'll get back to that as well. So why have two very similar JavaScript libraries? Actually came out of a discussion that, so like, at that time, this is, Pierre, correct me if I'm wrong, and this is like 2 years ago. At that point, Backbone seems to be all the rage. Knockout was really all the rage. And I couldn't really decide on which one we should actually support because I felt that if we just went with Backbone, we would lose half the developers. If we went with Knockout, we will lose the other half. So we sort of like did a hybrid version of it. I don't think it was the greatest choice that I've ever made, but it works. It works right now, and it actually works quite well, as you have already seen. But it's one of the things that I really want to change. And that I actually had a guy come up to me and say, well, it makes a lot of sense. I really get why you're using Backbone and Knockout, and you use one for views and one for modeling. It makes total sense to me. And that feedback took me a little by surprise, I must admit. But it's one of the things that you'll see later in this presentation that we're actually doing something about. And that is the end for me for this part. I'll be back later, hopefully.
Excellent. Well, that was certainly more than we bargained for. So thank you for the info, Jakob. That was fantastic, helpful. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of views after this, where it's already spreading.
I hope I didn't bore you too much.
No, quite the opposite. You've actually made our lives easier. We get asked those questions often, from JavaScript to content editor replacement. You're really hitting the questions that folks want answers to. Right. We've also had our other celebrity guest join from UK, Pierre. Say hello to the crowd.
Hello, guys. Can you hear me?
We can, perfectly, loud and clear. So I think next up, Tim or Pierre, we were going to look at a demonstration of the Gen 3 Speak as we introduced earlier. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Pierre's going to show us his stuff.
Great.
The demo, that is.
Great. So, Pierre, take it away, or if you have any lead-in or questions, let us know.
Yep. So I hope you can see my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Good. So basically, in this demo, I wanted to show you really basic stuff in Speak, like how do I get started, and you will see that's quite easy. And in that process, I will create a page. I will add component into a page, and after we will create a really simple components. During the presentation, I will use the Speak 1.2, and I will explain you at each step what is different from the 1.1 and 1.2, so that you are aware of what we have changed and what is not changed. So this is my my instance, and I will create a page don't bother too much on where I place that. You can choose whatever, whenever you want. So basically, to create a page, you add a new item, and you need to search for speak base page. You can give it a name. Let's say Hangout. And that's it. You have created one page. So now that you have created a page, of course, you need to add some components. So you design layout on that page. And the first things you do when you create a new Speak page is to assign the layout. And that's something, it's where you will decide which version of Speak you will use. So as you can see, you have two different layouts, the Speak layout and the Speak Technology Preview layout. The Speak Technology Preview is the 1.2 version, and the Speak layout is the 1.1 version. Then I guess that at that point you have a lot of questions, like which one should I use? And I would say that currently the stable one is Speak layout. But if you really want to, I mean, let's say that you do not need to release in 2 weeks and you have time and you can, you want to experiment something, then I would invite you to use the Speak Technology Preview layout, because as it's still a preview, so if you have feedback to give us before it become the main version, that would be great. So you pick a layout. At that point, you have nothing is in the page. The only component that you must add in a Speak page is the page code. The page code is a kind of controller for the page, but it's a bit more of a controller because you can have a page code on the server side and the client side. And it works almost the same way. In a page code, in both server side, client side, you both have reference to the component. And basically, by setting property on the component, you will change the component. And I will give you an example after. So at that point, I have my Speak page. We will just make sure that I have an empty page before going further. Of course. And if I do obvious mistake, please correct me, like this one, for example. Test app 2. Okay. Test app 2 / Yeah, I did that presentation many times. So we have the Speak page. Let's have a look at the Google Chrome Dev Tool and the console. And you will see you will have a Sitecore object. That's something you need to know before in the Speak 1.1, the decision has been made that the app, so the page accessed by Sitecore.app, and that's where your component lives in the page. In the Speak 1.1 version, the Speak.app is not exposed. If you do Speak.app and you press enter, it will give you console log application. So for Speak 1.1, when you want to have the Speak for debugging purpose in the window object, you just put the sc_debug = 1, and when you press enter, you will see I have no component in the page, but you will have a lot of extra information. I will show you that after. So far we have an empty page, so let's add a component. I think I have created a test presentation 3, yeah, which is basically this test presentation, just a text box. How you assign properties basically with rocks. How you define your components by assigning properties. So let's make let's do it here. Let's refresh the page. And I put it in the page code placeholder. So you see, I'm showing you what not to do. So of course, the component needs to be in the page body and not the page.code. So if I refresh now, I have the yellow guys. And I'm is cdebug 1. So as you can see, we can have a lot of information. So it's saying I'm creating the view model for the text presentation. That it's useful. I will just get rid of that now, just to have some more space. Let's have a look at the page code. And normally we should have here the ID of this text presentation tree is called text presentation tree. Yeah. We can change that. Let's say text. And you will see that the text example, I need to refresh. Text. So basically what the ID of the component here is reflected into the Sitecore.app object. So if I press enter, I have a JavaScript object. And as you can see, this JavaScript object has properties. It reflects, in fact, the properties that you have in your component that you define in the parameters template that Jakob showed you before during the presentation. But we will create one, so you will get more information about that after. So let's set a property. In version 1, before you had a backbone model exposed into the page code. Now it's no more backbone model because in 1.2 we totally get rid of backbone. And in fact now the core in 1.2 is really much generic. It has no dependency at all, even in jQuery. It's pure vanilla JavaScript. And the idea of making it the more generic as possible is that after you can plug in the framework you want in order to create all your component library or create your application. So if you want to get back to Backbone, you could. I will show you that after. But right now, it's no more on the page because our text presentation is not using it. So I will change the property of that text. And as you can see, it will automatically change the value of the component in the page. The nice things about 1.2 is that, so before you always needed to get and set in order to set and get values, and now you can use a normal assignation like you would in JavaScript. So let's say I'm not really creative. Hello again, and as you can see, it has updated the page. So that's two syntax that you can use. I think this one is much more easier than the get and set. So I have added a component now. We will add another one. Let's add an input. So I did an input text presentation, which is a basic input text field. And I will again put something on the text. So I'll put Marty McFly. So let's say, okay, now we have two components, the page, text one, and an input one. I will just here. Let's change the ID. Let's call it Marty. Oh, no, let's call it first name. Okay. And now in my app, which is the representation of the page code, as you can see now I have two components. And same thing again, if you do first name, not refresh the page, sorry. So if I do first name, let's directly get the text I have. I just update it works. So now basically you got the point that you set properties on a component in JavaScript or in JavaScript, and it's being reflected directly to the component. In the same way, when you define a properties in rocks and you set values, it's automatically loaded in the client side, if I could say. So how can I make components working together? Basically, we do that by bindings. So and you can already do a lot by bindings. So here I will bind the first name component, which is an input text, with the text, and it's really easy. Basically, you go to the text, and instead of R-coding the value, you just bind it to the text property of the input value. So let's do that. Let's refresh the page. And as you can see now, I will say Marty McFly. And as soon as I will trigger a change, so just by losing focus, I need to reload the page, sorry. So as you can see now, both the text and the input box are bind together. So if I just change the name of the input, automatically will change the text property of the text component. And that's generally how you create your page, by binding components. A much more complex example would be like you have a list control, and you define a component with your list control, and you have a data source. And that data source will have, let's say, an items, and it will be bind to the list control.items. And basically both will be decoupled. So your data source will really deal with fetching the data, and the list control will deal with rendering the data. And we keep that decoupled by doing bindings.
I think instantly that has pretty much taught everyone how it works. I think that was the best demo we could have done, because I instantly know how things are connected.
Okay, so now, yeah, I'm not in the correct solution. You should not see that. So let's create a component now. You will see, of course, this is 1.2. So I cheat a bit because we did a lot of work on creating new components in 1.2. In Rocks, basically, you add a new item, and Jakob prepared some templates. Sitecore prepared templates, which is Speak 1.2. So as you can see here, you can create it, the Speak-based component for 1.1, but here, let's have some more fun, and let's create a Speak component 1.2. Let's call it Hangout. I create this, so automatically it will ask me, I think this is awesome, it will ask me where in the content tree I want to create my component. Let's put it straight ahead. Maybe I will put in renderings, because it will be the same name. So let's put it in renderings, and I click OK. And as you can see now, I have view renderings automatically created. I have here an hangout.html, and here an hangout.js. Here there's a little bug that it's uppercase for Sitecore, and that's it. That's all you need. If I put that on a page, and let's say I would quote something, sorry, let's quote something. Let's put it test, and now we will add it into my page, which is here. So we have this component, and of course this component right now is nothing, because I did not define anything. So if I go to the parameters, as you can see, it has no parameters. But still, let's see what will happen. That's normal. It's because I did not publish. So I'm working outside the root folder of my website, so I needed to publish in order that it can find. That's really good, because I do all the mistake that a newcomer would do. So now we'll refresh, and normally you should see test rendered in the page. It takes more time because he is rebuilding, recycling. So if you have questions while it's reloading, ask them.
I think. Stephen, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, my questions were more around kind of, I suppose, best practicey type things. That, for example, if I'm using a button, say, for example, from the component library, and I want to take that button and just add a couple of extra parameters to it, or make a specialized version of the button, would you guys reckon that I should go and duplicate that button in the business component library and rename it, my button? Or can I actually inherit from that button and take all of the stuff with it and then add my own things into it? Or do I just create a new component from scratch? What would your kind of advice be?
I can answer that if you like, Stephen. I think from a Sitecore point of view, when you do your parameters template and all that kind of stuff, then you do get inheritance. So you can inherit all the parameters that you do on a ordinary button. The problem really lies with the razor views, because there's no way, at least as far as I know, to inherit from an existing razor view. So you have to do a new razor view. I also kind of think it makes sense because it is a completely new button, and you may want to do some very tricky tweaking of that button, and that's why you need a new razor view for it. So basically, well, yes, you can do it the Sitecore way and inherit the template, and no, you can't inherit the razor button. The razor view, sorry.
That's fine. So if I'm just adding, like a setting in or something like that, I can just add it into the parameters or whatever. But then but normally you just create a new version of it.
Yeah, and put it in a component library and publish it for the rest of us to enjoy.
In pink.
In pink, yes.
Well, I'm already planning the Hello Kitty one is
a pink razor button. That should be interesting.
I've got a question maybe it's actually branching off Stephen. So he wants to build a new type of button. Pierre just showed a demo. I want to be able to cover my new controls with a unit test. How do we do that with Speak?
Yeah. So first you need to pick a JavaScript library to run your test. We used the asmin, but it would work. I mean, basically you could work whatever you want. Maybe I can show you how we write the test. Actually, maybe I don't know if I find them. Yeah, here. When you do unit testing, you always need to be aware of not testing the framework, because you don't want to test Speak. You want to test your actual component. So the idea in the JavaScript part, you need what the course is doing is parsing the DOM. And based on the markup it has, maybe I can show you here. Because to do the unit test, you need to understand a bit of how the Sitecore works. And basically what it will do is that it will try to parse for data SC component here, which is a text presentation tree. And that will tell, and it's also parsed for data SC ID. So the ID is really the ID of the component. That's what you got reflected here in the Sitecore app object. And if you want to unit test that, how we do generally is that basically you define different kind of, let's say you have a button, you define different kind of button. I mean the same button but in different states. So if your button is visible to true, is visible to false, and it has a complex property that you want to test, you just drop it in HTML. I mean, basically we use Sitecore, we render it, we copy paste that, and we copy paste that in a runner. So generally when you use Mockhouse Yasmin, you have the runner.html. So maybe I could send you some links after. And all you need to do is just basically write the JavaScript that's like you would. You put in the runner the Sitecore, the Speakcore. Speakcore will pass the HTML of your runner.html. So it will instantiate the right component. And when it's done, you just need to make your test. So you just set the property that you want to test to the component. And after you can pull it up with jQuery or whatever you want and see if the change you did on the parameter is well reflected on the HTML. Of course, if it's a data provider, then you can mock the Ajax using, I don't know, Sign-On or Mockjax, a library like that, in order to fake the server so that you can test how your data source will behave on the timeout, how it will behave if the server went down. So you can do that. But there is nothing special instead of just pulling maybe the R-coded HTML. So maybe I can give you an example here. So let's say the button.test. Basically, this is, of course, you need a kind of setup. So maybe we will need to do a blog post about that. But Jasmine, how conf. It's a file which set up everything for you. And basically what you do is that we require the button to say, give me the button. And for each of those, we have a template. And if I put the button, as you can see, you have the HTML. As I said, this is 3 different buttons. I don't know really. Yeah, one is enable, one is disable, one is with icon and text. So you put that, and automatically this will be instantiated. So the Sitecore will be available for you, and from that point you can play with it as you would inside a page code. But I did not explain you what is a page code.
No, that's cool. No, that definitely helps a lot. Maybe we'll get Jakob and Pierre to put out some blog posts on it, because I think that'll be pretty critical for everyone.
I think that's really important and a great idea if you guys can spare the time and contribution. I also have a list of inbound already of questions that looks like we may have to schedule a part 2, either live or scheduled follow-up questions along the lines about things like debug, or can I extend out-of-the-box applications that are written in Speak, things like email campaign manager, custom data sources. I've got a whole laundry list of questions coming inbound. So at least we've got some good blog topics, or if you guys this wasn't too painful for you, we'd love to have you back on.
Oh, that sounds great.
So again, thank you, Jakob and Pierre, for joining as guest speakers about Speak today. And once again, Tim, Stephen, and Martin, thank you for joining, as well as the Sitecore folks that have logged in. This will conclude our session 11 behind Sitecore 7. And if anyone has questions, again, hashtag Sitecore 7, or as always, the folks on this list are ready to respond. Thanks again for joining, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.